And then Marchand up to his usual antics. Oh, it is a night of spite here in Boston.
Imagine being so hated that the NHL issues a memo specifically telling you to stop licking people. That's Brad Marchand's legacy in a nutshell, and it's only part of the story. From slew-foots to cheap shots to memes about his punchable face, Marchand has built an entire career from being both despised and respected at the same time. And today, we're exposing the real reason why everyone hates Brad Marchand.
Conwell has no chance to defend himself, and they have to suspend him.
Marchand's reputation for infamy didn't happen overnight. It built up in stages. In the early years, he showed more than just flashes of being a reliable scorer. But it wasn't his offense that got people talking. It was the way he pushed boundaries on the ice, mixing genuine skill with a growing list of questionable plays that other players couldn't ignore. The moment his game shifted to include slew-foots, elbows, and low bridges, the narrative began to stick. These are the kind of moves that don't just hurt in the moment, they can endanger careers. And when one guy is repeatedly the culprit, it doesn't feel like bad luck.
Dangerous play. Yeah, I don't like that at all, but again,
it feels intentional. By now, the record is clear. Multiple suspensions, 6 in his NHL career, plus several fines and hearings. For a player talented enough to be a first-line scorer, that's an incredible amount of time lost to discipline. The league's punishments only reinforced the reputation that was already spreading across locker rooms and fan bases. This wasn't a guy you could trust to play within the rules. But none of that, not even the slew-footing, prepared the hockey world for the all-time bizarre moment that defined Marchand's legacy: the face-licking. In Game 1 of the 2018 playoffs against Toronto, Marchand found himself jawing at Leo Komarov. Rather than chirp back or throw a jab, he leaned in and licked Komarov right across the face. After the game, Marchand shrugged it off with a smirk, joking, "He keeps trying to get close to me. I don't know if he has a thing for me or what, but he's cute." Fans and media exploded over it. Some said it was hilarious trolling, others called it embarrassing for the league in the middle of the playoffs. Either way, it made headlines around the world.
I'm not trying to get into his head, he kept coming after me after the whistles and stuff like that every time he was going to the bench, so I just thought that if he wanted to keep touching me that we were going to get a little closer than he may want to.
And then, incredibly, he did it again. This time on Ryan Callahan of the Lightning later in the same playoff run. That was the final straw. Colin Campbell, the NHL's executive VP of hockey operations, personally called Marchand and Bruins GM Don Sweeney. The message couldn't have been more blunt. Stop, or the next incident will mean supplemental discipline. When the league has to issue an official anti-licking policy, you know someone has crossed a line no one even thought existed. As strange as it sounds, Marchand's antics weren't random. They fit into the same strategy he'd been developing his whole career. He knew if he could irritate, embarrass, or distract opponents, he could tilt the ice in Boston's favor. He gets opponents thinking about him, not the game.
and Marchand is going to get the rest of the day off, I'm pretty sure.
That distraction often creates openings, penalties, and momentum swings. In a sport where mental control is everything, Marchand weaponized annoyance. And most importantly, he was self-aware about it. Marchand himself once said, "Fans get a very small insight of who we are as people. They watch the games and they build opinions on players off who they are on the ice." On the ice, he wanted to be hated, because the more players focused on chasing him, the easier it became for his teammates to take advantage. Off the ice, he knew it created a distorted picture, but he leaned into it anyway. By the end of those playoff runs, his behavior wasn't just a running joke. It was a full-blown storyline. Fans began booing him on sight, opposing players ripped him in interviews, and analysts debated if he had officially become the dirtiest player in hockey. But the louder the criticism grew, the bigger the Marchand persona became. A villain who didn't just irritate opponents, but managed to dominate hockey conversations far beyond his actual stats.
See what Marchand did? He stuck his leg out as Kunitz was going by.
And that's what made the next stage of his career so fascinating. The Marchand hate wasn't about cheap plays anymore. It evolved into something cultural, spreading through locker rooms, broadcasts, and even internet memes. Here's the part that trips fans up. His peers repeatedly voted him the player they'd least like to face, yet would want on their own team. In the 2021-22 NHLPA Players Poll, Marchand pulled in 26.4% of the vote in that exact category. A year later, the number was even higher at 29.2%. Getting almost a third of the league's players to agree on anything is rare, and yet season after season, Marchand dominates this list. The contradiction is obvious. Opponents hate dealing with him, but they also admit he's the type of guy you win with. That duality didn't just show up in numbers. It comes out in how people talk about him. Media and rival players call him dirty, teammates call him a leader. Some coaches outside Boston even acknowledge what he brings. Florida Panthers coach Paul Maurice summed it up with one simple line: he's a good teammate. Others have remarked he's surprisingly supportive and respectful behind the scenes. These comments don't erase the cheap shot label, but they complicate it. Inside his own locker room, he's often described as dependable, quick-witted, and steady in big games. The coverage around him only adds to this strange blend. Headlines never let you forget about his suspensions, licking incidents, or cheap shots, but those same clips often sit right next to graphics of his point totals, playoff impact, and leadership notes. The split in coverage keeps him squarely in the spotlight. Still, no one drives the conversation harder than the internet. Reddit threads about Marchand rack up hundreds of comments, usually splitting into two groups: those who insist he's the dirtiest player alive, and those who admit, begrudgingly, he's a pest but a very, very good player. That single line from a top-voted comment pretty much sums it up. On Twitter and Instagram, he's the subject of endless polls and memes. One week it's the punchable face joke, the next it's Halloween costumes with fans wearing giant rat teeth or pretending to lick visors in his honor. Even his nicknames, the little ball of hate and the rat, make him sound more like a cartoon villain than a hockey player. What makes it different from your average online pile-on is how consistent the response is. Fan polls routinely rank him near the very top of most hated lists, sometimes in semi-serious ways, sometimes exaggerated for comedy. In one viral post, fans joked they'd rather see their starting goalie switch teams than ever welcome Marchand. That's obviously sarcastic, but the punchline reveals something deeper. Even those who laugh at him acknowledge how much mental space he occupies in the hockey world. Marchand hasn't pushed back against any of this. He leaned into it. He eggs on boos from away crowds, waving his arms to get louder reactions. On social media, he'll chirp back with sarcastic quips that keep people talking. By embracing the villain role, he's flipped hate into a personal brand, one that sells as much as his scoring highlights. For fans, the rivalry becomes entertainment. For opponents, it's a constant distraction. And that's why his image isn't simply about cheap plays or viral moments anymore. It's about a system that keeps him in constant focus. Polls, media debates, memes, even opposing crowds giving him more attention than their own stars. His reputation has become bigger than specific incidents, turning resentment into something the sport thrives on. Which leaves one lingering question for viewers to think about. Is the hate really about him? Or is it about how much people secretly wish he played for their team? Brad Marchand's reputation isn't simple hate, it's bigger than that. He's mocked for antics like face-licking, feared for dangerous plays, but also respected because he combines elite offense with lingering discipline issues, including seasons with 100-plus points and a history of multiple suspensions. That blend is what makes him impossible to ignore. He's the guy you boo from the stands and secretly want in your locker room. And in his own words, I don't play in spite of people. I play for the people who pushed me along. Comment, would you rather have a Marchand on your team or never face him in a playoff series? Explain one example. If you enjoyed this video on Brad Marchand, check this one out about his lifestyle. It's not what you think.